Is the camera on? I can never tell if the camera's on. Okay, I think it's recording. If it's not recording, I'll just talk louder. I am Brian Lee Durfee, author of The Forgetting Moon, The Blackest Heart, and The Lonesome Crown, all published by Simon & Schuster Saga Press. And today, I'm here to talk to you about The Blackest Heart. Okay, so welcome back to the channel, everybody. I am your humble and not Brian Lee Durfee host, Alex Nieves. So, let's talk about The Blackest Heart. This is book 2 of the Five Warrior Angels trilogy. And I read The Forgetting Moon last year, and it was absolutely fantastic. It was one of my biggest surprise reads, just with how good it was. And I am very, very appreciative of Brian Lee Durfee for sending me both of those books signed, as your autograph is spectacular and the books kick ass. So if you don't know anything about the series, it seems to be somewhat still relatively unknown amongst booktube and the fantasy genre as a whole. I think it's pretty criminal how lacking there are in reviews for these books, because they are fucking awesome. If you know anything about Petrick, he praises this series up and down. It's absolutely incredible. Everybody I know that have read them absolutely adore them. We've had a bunch of people in Discord read them recently and just completely fall in love with them. We cannot wait for The Lonesome Crown Book 3, which is going to be like a massive epic finale, so I am so excited for that sometime next year. But let's get into The Blackest Heart. Straight off the bat, this takes place about 2 weeks after the conclusion of The Forgetting Moon. Now, The Forgetting Moon was a fantastic foundational piece to this story. Tons and tons of characters, not quite as crazy as something like a Malazan, but definitely more along the lines of like Faithful and the Fallen or A Song of Ice and Fire, and how many characters and POVs there are. There's a lot of POVs. I'm not gonna lie to you. There's a lot of POVs, but there is a beautiful, multi-page section at the back of the book that talks about who each character is, where they belong to in their family, ages, things like that. So if you ever get confused, that is available to you in the book. Now, overall, what this book is about is where in book 1, I felt like I couldn't really get a grasp on exactly what was happening as far as a central plot. And there's definitely some of that going on as well here, similar to the sense in Faithful and the Fallen, but a little bit more obscure. So like Faithful and the Fallen, you know that there is this sort of good versus evil battle built on a prophecy that is meant to take place. Sort of happening here too. So you have the Way of Lejean, which is this religion that is built this entire society effectively. So there is sort of this main plot happening of a sort of religious standoff and religious war occurring. You have this entire plot of trying to find these 5 warrior angels relics, these religious items, whether it be a stone or an axe or a shroud. Basically, what was going to be a 5-book series, now 3. The titles of them were each of these items. So you have The Lonesome Crown, The Forgetting Moon, The Blackest Heart, and then Ethic Shroud and Afflicting Fire. So you have all these items that different characters are after. You have your villains, you have your good guys for the most part, that are sort of seeking these items out and trying to fulfill these various prophecies that exist. And central to this plot of all these different intermingling and intertwining and branching POVs, you have religion at the core of this book. Now, what I really, really liked about that is that throughout, so let me set the scene for a second here. I've seen several times these books accused of being sexist. Yes, they are, and that is by design, because if you read these books, there is this entire premise and setup of a certain, basically, section of this world where the Way and Truth of Lejean, which is the religious text that is preached and sort of beaten into everybody's heads, is sexist and used to persecute people and oppress people and manipulate people. And women are largely treated like crap because of this religion that has its hold on this section of this world. Now, counterpoint to that is there's another section of the world that thinks the Way and Truth of Lejean is a bunch of bullshit. And they call it out many times throughout this book. They are constantly asking women that, why do you even follow this religion? Because of how it treats you. Like, you have the Sore Severe sort of invaders as part of this holy war that's going on. Their numbers way outweigh this group that is stuck on this religion, And it's because they let women into their military. They let women fight in combat next to them, whereas you have sort of like a Mulan-esque mentality on this side where it's like if a woman fights in combat, like that's against their religion and they deserve to be murdered. So you have this sort of dynamic here between these two factions at war throughout like the background of this that finally comes to a head later on in the book. But amidst all of that, you have all of these incredible POV characters, whether it be Nail and his sort of almost chosen one plot line from book 1 to book 2. Have the entire cast of people sort of together in book 1, all sort of growing up together before they're thrust into this story. You have Janko and Nail and Liz Hen and Stefan and Ava Shea and all these characters that sort of come from the same area, and then they're totally different people in book 2. They've been through the ringer, whether it be Janko and sort of his like villain plotline that he's following, or Liz Hen, who isn't like a traditional female in this world, and she's bigger and stronger, and she's sort of like a Brienne of Tarth-ish kind of character, and she wants to fight. She wants to learn how to use a sword. You have Nail, who is sort of the reluctant chosen one character in this story, but obviously like his plotline isn't just as black and white as a typical chosen one. There's some things that happen with the prophecies in this book specifically, and the chosen one narrative, and all these different fantasy tropes, I guess, that Brian Lee Durfee puts his own spin on that are just excellent in this book. It's fantastic what he does with all these traditional chosen one and fantasy tropes that I didn't really expect. So there's tons of narrative choices here that were just excellent. But back to the characters, I mean, there was no character that bored me in this book. I mentioned initially in The Forgetting Moon that there were a couple that I didn't really care for, but in this, I didn't have that problem at all. I loved Nail's chapters. I loved Galt's chapters. Ava Shea was interesting because she's sort of sitting back and watching a lot of things happen to her around her. She's sort of a victim to her own plot. You have somebody like Krista, who her entire like assassin storyline is excellent, and that's another thing that this book does incredibly well. Is it sort of opens up what the Bloodwood Assassins are, and it's incredible. So yeah, the Bloodwood Assassins are just, everything is super awesome, and it really shows you early on in this book. And I mean, The Forgetting Moon did this as well, but just how dark this book is. And I mean, I'm willing to call this a grimdark book. I mean, the term grimdark can be used for a whole lot of things, but I mean, you have a lot of morally gray characters in this. I guess the reason against it is because, yes, there's a lot of violence and rape and mutilation and maiming and just blood and gore. Like, there's everything from like a shock factor as parts of these books. And you have some morally gray characters. You definitely have sort of like the good guys and the bad guys, but you do have plenty of gray characters, especially like the assassins in this story don't necessarily see themselves as villains. You have people like Galt, who have sort of a troubled past, but also do really good things and save people. You, of course, have like good characters like Nail and Liz Hen and Ava for the most part, and you have like your bastards like Janko and some of the other Bloodwood Assassins, for example, or like even the people in charge for sure. So like everyone in the religious power of this world are a bunch of bastards. You've got characters like Glade and Leaf and Jovan, and his name's slipping my mind, but the like Archbishop or whoever what is his name? I can't remember his name, but there's this like holy religious like priest figure that's with Jovan that's shisty and sus as fuck. So there is clearly good and evil in this world, but also a lot of gray. All the POVs are interesting, though. I think I already said that before, but just there was not a single POV chapter that I went to and rolled my eyes. I was always invested in each of these plot lines. They're all incredibly interesting. As I was talking about with Krista, or Crystalwood, as she's known as amongst the Bloodwood Assassins, that sort of steps into a lot of the darker aspects of this world, where they have this entire ritual where I'm not going to spoil what it is, but it ends with a lot of dead people. Their whole order gave me strong Dark Brotherhood vibes from Oblivion. and just the Elder Scrolls in general, and that was just right up my alley. It was super cool. I love assassin characters. That's like my jam. That and Rangers. But everything about just how dark and violent this world is so well done. I mentioned this in my review for The Forgetting Moon, but Brian Lee Durfee's writing style, his prose is fantastic. It's so lush with detail and description, and I mean, even like poetic language at times, sort of akin to a Robin Hobb, but he can also write relentless pacing, especially in the action scenes in this book, and especially the climax action of this book. One of the better fight scenes that I've read in a book in a long time. It's so well done, and it's reminiscent of a John Gwynne or a Sanderson in how well it flows and just how many cool things are happening. Just, I mean, the action, the writing, the dialogue is great. One of my favorite things, though, that he does in these books, and this book specifically, is the sort of commentary on religion and how it can be used to control people and abused by what's actually written and interpretations to use that to then oppress people or control people. That's all really well done. And you have so many characters sort of struggling with that and how they were raised on this, the way of truth of Lejean, and having to sort of battle with that internally of whether they believe in it or not, or it's so well done. And this is a big book too, and it didn't feel like it was overly long. It was just under 1,000 pages in this trade paperback. I loved every second of it. I cannot wait to get more of this world and see how it wraps up in book 3. I mean, it's so great. This is true epic fantasy in every sense of the word. The world feels alive and lived in. The writing style really brings all these characters to life. I feel so much effort was put into creating these narratives and the religious aspect of the world, and you can tell that Brian Lee Durfee has studied a ton of religion. I mean, as a former LDS member of the church that he was, and if you watch his channel, you see all these different religious books that he reads, whether it be a Book of Mormon, all the way to books about atheism. Like, he's got a grasp on how religion is structured and can be used and treated, and how people treat religion, and how prophecy can be interpreted. Everything about that was incredible. And something else that his time as a prison guard and working in the Utah State Prison, I think really shined with how he understands just like the plight of a prisoner. There was this great moment in this book where somebody is explaining to one of these assassins just like their entire ritual revolves around killing people, and they use a lot of inmates from prisons, and she's kind of defending their actions, saying, I'm not a bad person, they deserve to die, they're prisoners, they were in jail, like they deserved it. And there's this brilliant moment when the person she's talking to is just like, well, you and I were both in jail. Does that mean we deserve to die? Is somebody in prison automatically lesser than that of somebody who's not? Do they all deserve that fate, or can they have no chance of redemption? Just this entire thing was just like, it hit me, and because I know things about Brian Lee Durfee in his life and how he works in prison and probably deals with a lot of inmates and talks to them and has this sort of perspective on this, that really struck me as like, this guy gets it. And that was just one of the moments that really stuck out to me. And I love this book. I love this series. I think it's just beautifully well done. It's well written. I love the pacing. All the POVs are interesting. You guys should read these books. It's criminal that they're so underread. This deserves a hell of a lot more attention. These are great. I cannot wait for book 3. But that's going to wrap it up for this one, guys. Like and subscribe. As always, do hit up Patreon if you want to support the channel financially. And what I do here, that's always optional, but always greatly appreciated. Definitely jump in Discord, though. And let me know your thoughts on the book down in the comments down below. If you've read this or have any interest in this series, please pick it up. I do not think it's going to let you down. I absolutely adore it. And everybody in Discord that has been reading it is gushing over it. So you have plenty of people to chat with, and I would love to relive this with some of you if people want to start reading it. So definitely jump into the series if you haven't. And until next time, guys,